What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Moss Mode and Friends. I believe this is episode 11. 11th episode, we finally hit the double digits, and we definitely have a very special guest for you guys today. He's a 9-year vet in the NFL. He's a Pro Bowler. Every game he's played in the NFL, he's been a starter. His name is Eric Woods. He plays for the he played for the Buffalo Bills, and we definitely excited to have him.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate Ewood hopping on with us. Let's bring Ewood in. Ewood, what's up, man? How you doing?
Good, man. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast. Appreciate this early in the journey to be on the podcast, number 11. But
Yeah.
appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure to have you, man. Like we said, you played 9 years in the league. A lot of guys, strive to get there. Obviously, because it's very hard. Once you in it and things like that, and you kind of see everything that goes on. But let's start, at your origins. Essentially how you got there, right? Knowing you from Cincinnati. I'll let Badger go ahead and get into all that. But go ahead, Badger, take it away.
The first question I had for you, I was doing a little bit of research, and I seen your junior year you played tight end. And I seen that you had a 28-2 record in high school. I think your last 2 years, and you won state both years. So I was just gonna ask, what went into the switch of you your junior year playing tight end and going to your senior year switching to offensive line? Just like kind of what inspired that switch and what made you so successful as well.
Well, you never want to be that dude that no longer gets the ball. I'm not going to lie. And I didn't play center either at that time. So it wasn't like I was holding the ball each play either. But I'll say this, I was a rotational tight end my junior year. I was 6'4", 200 pounds. I played at a really good high school. We were always, both my junior and senior year, we were top 10, top 5 in the country. So we had a lot of talent on the team, but I was a rotational tight end, but I had a big frame, got some good advice to put on some weight. So I played my senior year at like 255 and played offensive line, ended up getting one scholarship offer to the University of Louisville. So I didn't have a bunch of decisions. I didn't have decision fatigue. There was no backup plan for me like many of these guys have going into college nowadays where, they feel like, man, if I'm not treated right or if I don't play early enough, I'm going to hit the road. For me, it was all in on Louisville, which was a blessing for me. I didn't have to make a big decision. It was, hey, I'm going to go down there and try and play as soon as possible, and ended up starting as a freshman down there. So I couldn't even start on my varsity football team in high school my senior year and then go and start as a redshirt freshman down at Louisville.
Yeah, that's a huge switch. I know a little something about switches because I played linebacker pretty much all the way up until like my first dose of running back was like my junior year of high school.
Wow.
Right? So I didn't play running back for a whole full year, like just mainly running back until my senior year of high school, right? And then was able to get some scholarships and things like that, and then go from there. So I understand the switch and the late switch because I like to think of myself definitely as a late bloomer when it came to the football and things like that. But I was a three-star recruit, right? And I know a lot of people. Some people care about stars, right? And some people don't. You were a 2-star recruit. Tell us, essentially about that. Obviously, it comes with the fact that you didn't play the position for so long because obviously you weren't a 2-star recruit because, you don't make it 9 years in the league and go straight to college and start and go from there, you know what I mean? Things like that. So tell us, do you think stars matter? Because now you see all these players in high school with NIL deals, all these 5-star recruits, all these things. And I kind of think some of the game gets missed with a lot of that type of stuff because then you get caught up with that type of stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely people that fall through the cracks. And for me, I was a no-star recruit until I committed to the University of Louisville. And then I got 2 stars at that point, just because when you accept a scholarship, you become at least a 2-star recruit. I was a 2-star recruit. But I'll say this, where there is, guys that fall through the cracks, there's also, if you look at who has made the college football playoff over the last, 6 or 8 years, every team that has made the college football playoff over their last 4 years have averaged a top 10 recruiting class, at least, and many top 5 recruiting class. So when you look at that, there is a lot of merit in the star system where they're ranking these guys because those are teams that are making the college football playoff. But if that's all you're doing and looking at stars like anything else, you guys both know this, there's politics involved. If you go to the most camps, if you are, hitting those rivals camps, the 24/7 camps, well, they're going to rank you higher because you're paying that money to get into their deals. So there is some gamesmanship with it. But when you look at it, ultimately, those sites don't want to be wrong very often. And when you look at the college football playoffs, the teams with the best recruiting classes based upon those sites are getting it done.
Very true. Very true. Because, I mean, we both from Miami, South Florida,
Definitely.
and things like that. You know, we take football super, super serious. I'm sure you come across playing with some dudes that was from South Florida as well.
Hey, I'll tell you this. When Charlie Strong came to the University of Louisville, there was a guy coming out of a Louisville school, Louisville Trinity, which was a really good school, and he was a awesome receiver, 4, maybe fringe 5-star guy. And Charlie Strong was like, "Look, this guy's a good player, but he's a dime a dozen in South Florida. I'm telling you, he's a dime a dozen." And he commits to the University of Louisville, and he didn't have that type of career that everyone thought he had. He didn't play in the league, and Charlie Strong kind of had a "I told you so" moment, because at times, and this is where the star system can get skewed, because I remember when I was at the University of Louisville, our biggest recruit ever was coming out of Alabama, a guy named Peanut Whitehead. He ended up having a career-ending spine injury, and I believe he would have been an excellent player, but he was the first 5-star guy that we got. Well, when he came in, he was a man amongst boys in high school. He was playing a real low level of football in Alabama, and he was 6'5", 250. So it's like he was just dominating these little puny tackles. Well, it was a transition for him, a hard transition. Now, I think he could have been a great player, but when you look at these guys that compete on the highest level, especially in Florida, Texas, I'll throw Ohio in there because Ohio's got great football, California, parts of Pennsylvania. You get guys that come out of there that play at a high level, those guys can transition quick to the next level.
Yep. Very true. Yeah. You definitely got to be able to transition very quickly, because then you sitting there in college and you looking around like, man, I don't know if this is for me. So it definitely gets tough, with the transition and things like that. But, now transitioning to my next question, let's talk about, your time at Louisville. Obviously, you went there, that was your one offer. You ended up starting your entire career there and everything like that. Tell us about your time in Louisville, and kind of, because, I mean, we didn't really think about Louisville that much. I know growing up, I didn't watch them on TV a lot until they really got Teddy Bridgewater, being from Miami, and then seeing what he did. And then obviously everybody knows Lamar Jackson and things like that. Tell us about your time at Louisville and kind of how you've seen the program grow over the time.
Well, I'll say this. It's kind of started with Charlie Strong, but even before that, Bobby Petrino and his staff recruited South Florida really well. We had a ton of talent come up from South Florida. But when you look at Teddy Bridgewater and Lamar Jackson coming out of South Florida and coming all the way up to Louisville, it tells you a little bit about what the city's all about. Like I've heard it said, and when you go to school there, sometimes they can sway things, but a lot of people say it's the biggest city in the country without a pro sports team. So when you're playing for the Cards, you have all these connections as soon as you graduate. There's so much built up around the school because we haven't got a pro sports team yet. So when you look at that, you got the Kentucky Derby here, you got the bourbon industry, you have all these things going. It makes it an attractive spot. And for a lot of guys, myself included, I was ready to leave home when I was going to college. So that's where they were able to get, you get a couple guys from South Florida. Well, then they start to recruit each other. You get a Teddy Bridgewater, he brings in an Eli Rogers, a John Miller, a bunch of guys who end up getting drafted from South Florida at the University of Louisville. But, honestly, I loved my time at U of L. It was perfect for me. It was a great spot. I grew a lot as a man, got introduced to Christ at the University of Louisville. I met my wife in Louisville. We now live in the city of Louisville. I'm recording this out of my basement in Louisville. So for me, the city became home. Yeah. And so it's extremely special to me. And really that one scholarship offer obviously changed the trajectory of my life.
That's what's up, man. Definitely.
And I got a quick question because I'm from Miami, Florida, and I went to school at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And just making that switch, it was a little different because it was away from home. But Pittsburgh was such a big city due to the sports team and things like that. But just talking about college football, I know a lot of high schoolers, they have this false reality about college football because to me, college football is a grind. It's not for everybody going through camp. That was my first time actually going through like a football camp where it was like my body was breaking down crazily. So can you just talk about I guess the sports side of college football, the things that people don't know if you don't play football, how that was at Louisville and how that prepared you to make it to the NFL?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to me, I think a lot of guys coming in out of high school, their whole focus is 3 years and out. I'm going to get in 3 years. I'm going to head to the league. But they don't understand what it takes to get to the league. And that's when I'm talking to college guys all the time. I'm like, understand, this time right now is an investment. And if you treat it correctly, it'll pay off for the rest of your life. But if you don't handle business, there is guys all across Division One, but even at the FBS level, the 1AA level, which was when I was in college, like those guys are competing for it too. When you look around an NFL locker room, it doesn't say across the lockers, it doesn't read Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma. There's guys from Eastern Washington, Louisville, Utah. They're all over from all over the country, and there's guys grinding everywhere. So if you think you're just going to go to college, step in there, your talent's going to supersede everyone else's work, you're dead wrong. But I will say this: you go in there and grind it and treat it right, then you can change the trajectory of your family tree. You can be that one in your family that makes it, that can take care of everybody. But don't just come in and say, hey, I'm going to be here for 2.5 years. I ain't going to worry about school. I'm not that interested in working out. I'm not going to get sleep. I'm going to go party, because then you're going to get left in the dust.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that. I mean, being from, where we're from and things like that, our mindset, our mindset is just so, we believe that we're the best in the world, right? South Florida and football and things like that. So,
and you got to have that confidence.
Yeah, you got to, right? And, playing against, the guys that we were playing against and things like that, and then having success, all that type of stuff. When I went to college, and that was one of the reasons I chose Utah personally, because one, I was like, all right, I know I want to do this and do that. And like you said, a lot of guys' mindset is 3 and out, right? Because, sometimes that's the best case scenario for some guys, because you don't know what guys come from, like their background and what they're trying to get out of everything and things like that. So I know mine was 3 years and out. And I remember when I first got there, it was I'm like, okay, I know I'm better than this guy, X, Y, and Z. But I'm seeing the extra work that these guys are putting in, from the treatment side of things, the rehab side of things, which guys, I think, don't take enough care of their bodies the way they should, because your body is your biggest investment, right? And all these things I learned, I would see our running back literally run 60 yards, every time he touched the ball and finish an end zone. And I'll just stop at 20 yards and turn around, because I'm like, this is practice, right? So those are things that I learned, because he ended up playing in the league and things like that. And we had a lot of guys at Utah who ended up playing in the league, definitely from out of my when I got there as a freshman. And I would just see the work, like you said, you have to learn how to work. Just don't think that your talent is going to put you in that place where you want to be. Doesn't matter what your mindset is, right? You got to also have the mindset and then have the actions to follow up that mindset and do things that you have to do. Because I remember my freshman year, I was definitely not in the mindset of, okay, I want to do this, that, and the other, right? Because I didn't think I was going to make it to the league. Definitely in high school, that wasn't, essentially my thought, right? Because it wasn't a goal. Because people always think it's essentially a goal for every guy who makes it to the league, and sometimes it's not. I'm obviously, when did you think that you would make it to the league? Because I know for me personally, I thought that I could make it to the league in and of my sophomore years, when I really ended up kind of understanding who I was as a player.
Yeah, I love talking about this. That's a great question. So when I was in high school and I got that one scholarship offer, I go down to the University of Louisville. I'm originally from Cincinnati, so we grew up big Bengals fans. And me and my high school buddies used to talk about all the time. We were like, man, if you could make the Bengals practice squad, you could make $90,000 a year. And if you go get a job in the offseason, you could make over $100,000. I came from a very blue-collar, hard-working side of Cincinnati. And that was our mindset. If I can be the one to make $100,000 a year, how crazy would that be? Well, I made the freshman All-American team at U of L. I made the freshman All-American team in 2005. And so you get a letter from whatever publication it was, and it said, X amount of these guys get drafted. This percentage goes in the 3rd round, 2nd round, 1st round, historically from this All-American team. And that instantly put a confidence in me, like, holy smokes, I can go get drafted. Not just to be on a practice squad, I could get drafted, maybe play in the league. And that same year, Nick Mangold got drafted in the 1st round as a center. Well, I didn't know center. I had just transitioned to center. I didn't know a lot about the draft. That wasn't a ton on my radar. So I saw Nick Mangold get drafted. I was about the same size as him. We were kind of on all the same All-American teams, and where Nick Mangold had just an unbelievable career, maybe a Hall of Famer. I looked at that like, holy smokes, I could maybe one day be a 1st-round draft pick. And I always talk about this on my podcast. what's next with Eric Wood. It comes up all the time with guys where there's like one moment in your life where someone speaks some confidence into you, or you get some confidence from somewhere, whether it's that letter, whether it's a coach that tells you, Zach, we're going to move you to running back and you could be an NFL running back one day. Like that happens in so many people's journeys, whether you're a CEO, a doctor, whatever it may be, but football players especially. So that letter gave me the confidence to answer your question that one day I could play in the NFL.
Very true. Very true. Like you said, like sometimes it just takes that one person to just give you that confidence. I know mine's came from, right, my freshman year, I didn't really feel it, see it and things like that. Battled through some injuries my freshman year. So you obviously, injuries you go up and down with those things, especially in our sport. And then we got a new running back coach. I don't know if you know the name Dennis Erickson.
Yeah.
But Dennis Erickson was my running back coach my freshman year. Right. So
Wow.
and he recruited me from Miami, which is how a lot of us got from, because people always ask me, how do you get from Miami to Utah? And I'm like,
Right.
Dennis Erickson. And if you know Dennis Erickson, then you understand it. But after he left, he retired after my freshman year, and I got to learn so much from him, just literally being around a legend every single day. We got a new running back coach, Keel McDonald, who's now running back coach at USC. But he just took me under his wing essentially and kind of saw, what I could do and what I could be. And I had never seen that before. And I had never had someone essentially do that or tell me that. And so just speaking to, the confidence, instilling the confidence, because people don't understand how much confidence goes so far in a player, right? Sometimes people hate to see guys like Baker Mayfield because he literally wears it outside of it and things like that. But it does something to a player to have that type of confidence, because then you're unstoppable, I believe, essentially.
Yeah. I always say the perfect mindset, no matter what you're doing in life, is a combination of confidence and humility. The confidence that, man, you cannot stop me. No matter what I'm doing, you cannot stop me. But also the humility to say there's so much I can learn and I'm going to have to work my tail off to get it. And when you have that mindset, then you can accomplish anything. If you have too much confidence, eventually you're going to have some blind spots in your life and you're going to miss out on something. If you have too much humility, you're never going to be great because you're not going to see that greatness in yourself.
That's great right there. That's
and
great.
I definitely agree. And I was going to ask, what was that moment at Louisville, rather it was on the field in the off season, where you felt like the NFL, kind of like how we just talked about, but like where you felt like I'm the best in the NCAA. I know I should be a first round pick, or I should be a second round pick. I should be a high draft pick. Like, what moment was that? Like, was it a certain game that you played where you like maybe had 5-6 pancakes, or you just had a game where you felt unstoppable? When you like, man, I know the NFL right there. Like, I should be in the NFL. I should be a first round pick. Like, at what moment at Louisville did you have that moment? Like, like I'm the best here, and I feel like I should definitely be at the next level.
Man, that's a great question. So I ended up getting a lot of confidence my sophomore year. When you're a freshman playing on an offensive line and there's I was playing center, 2 guys on either side of me that all played in the NFL. At times I kind of just felt like, hey, I'm the weak link here, but I'm young, I'll be scrappy. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to fight. But at times, we're helping me out in protection as opposed to late in my career. They're leaving me one-on-one and helping other guys out. But I was always kind of the guy getting help. But then that offseason, you address, whether it's physical limitations, whatever it may be, you address those things. And I came out my sophomore year, and I truly felt like a beast out there. We played Kentucky in our first game, and, they're an SEC school. They recruit fairly well, but, like, I understand they're not at the top of the SEC. But, you start out first game of the year, and you're throwing around some SEC defensive linemen. Then you get the confidence like, okay, I can do this. I can go play at the next level. And then I remember my senior day, my last year, when you go to the combine, Zach knows this, when you go to the combine, they're like, hey, what are like 3 tapes you want us to watch on you? And we played West Virginia, and they had this nose guard. He was fairly highly ranked as far as like Big East teams and whatnot. And I threw him around like the entire game. Like literally, he was trying to two-gap me, so he's trying to read me. So he had no momentum coming into me, and I was just raking him off the ball every play. And I was like, all right, if I think if enough people watch this film, I might end up being a first rounder. And I knew I'd do well at the combine just because athletically I was pretty gifted. And I had long arms. I was taller for a center. I'd run pretty well. And so, kind of heading into that offseason, the hopes were that I'd be a first rounder, but obviously nothing's guaranteed.
No, for sure. And I know,
Yeah.
I know just from like where we from, like a lot of people down here are so talented they forget to kind of put in the work. So, I just like stressing to people, like to young people, about when you get to college, it's about doing things like off the field, even when it's not mandatory, or like for like workouts and stuff like that, just doing things on your own, going to the weight room, grinding if you really want to go to the next level. And I think as I see you talking to Zach, talking to other people, a lot of people put in so much extra work that's not mandatory, and that's how it's possible to make it to the next level. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, and what I would add to that too is sometimes you don't know what that extra work looks like. And
Yeah.
so my biggest advice to guys transitioning to college or the NFL
Get
or
a
in
vet.
business, whatever you're in, find a veteran who is where you want to be. And what, like, even transitioning out of the NFL for me, I was looking for business leaders in Louisville, around the country, guys that have big podcasts, that guys that are super successful and have transitioned out successfully. What can I learn from them? So if you're going into college, find, and you're playing receiver, you're playing running back, find whoever is that dude and then copy what he does. And
Exactly.
then you don't have to be him, you be yourself, you pass him up and you do your own thing. But what made him successful? What's he like? How does he eat? How does he sleep? What's his recovery like? Because if you're coming out of high school, a lot of that stuff is foreign to you.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Very true. Yeah. I definitely had a vet in Utah who helped me. And now, we're still friends to this day. He's a coach now. Essentially, he was back then, he was coaching,
Yeah.
essentially, and prepping himself. And then now, obviously, being in the league, you got to have vets, right? That's why so many teams stack up their teams with vets in each room, because we all understand it. And vets are very, very, viable for a locker room. I mean, just look at Udonis Haslam, because he's a big Heat fan. So I always got to throw shots at the Heat. Look at Haslam. They begging
Udonis,
him.
Udonis Haslem was just in Louisville playing at my country club.
Really?
Yeah, he was up here for D'Angelo Russell's camp.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So no
So,
Udonis Haslam slander today. We don't want to hear it.
but anyway, I mean, we talked about, obviously, being a first round pick, right? That doesn't happen for everyone, because obviously we know how many people get drafted. We know how many people come out of who play football in this country and things like that. And then for that to forever be attached to your name, being a first round pick. Talk about that. How did that make you feel, essentially? And then obviously being drafted to Buffalo, what did you know about Buffalo? And then obviously, we'll dive into, Bills Mafia and all those things.
Yeah, so for me, it was a dream come true. It was a culmination of a ton of work. Got to spend the day with family and friends, and it was truly special. That was back when there was only like 3 or 4 guys that got invited to. It was New York at the time every year.
Gotcha.
So for me, I was just at home at my mom's place with like my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, one of my close buddies, and then just surrounded by family because I didn't want all that pressure. And then we had a party that night after it happened. But for me, it was a dream come true. And I thought I was going 30 seconds to the Steelers. Mike Tomlin had told me the day before the draft, hey, don't tell anybody, but you're going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. Well, I didn't tell anybody, and then all of a sudden, Kuiper and McShay both start projecting me 32 to the Steelers. I'm like, well, I didn't tell anybody, but you guys, looks like you guys might have. And then Buffalo out of nowhere, I didn't take a pre-draft visit to Buffalo. They didn't come visit me, but I did meet with them at the combine. They took me at 28. I knew nothing about Buffalo. I thought it was like 15 hours from Louisville. Instead, it's about 7 because it's sitting right on that corner of Pennsylvania, Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
New York. So to me, and we'll get into this, but the Bills organization, from the second I walked into the building, embraced me with open arms and treated me completely first class. The city of Buffalo loved me from the day I walked in, and that's something I'll never forget. That's why I love calling games for the Bills now, being around there, keeping my foundation in Buffalo, and spending time up there, is because from the second I got there, they just treated me so well that it's one of those deals where you constantly want to give back to those that support you.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, like getting into Bills Mafia. Obviously, what was the first game, right? Because I'm pretty sure, was when I got drafted here. Obviously, I heard, because I didn't know much about the Bills and things like that. And I remember when I got drafted, the first thing I did was the next day I went and turned on YouTube and looked at the latest Bills game, which happened to be the game that we lost to Houston in the playoffs, right? And I remember watching that game, and I'm like, okay, they just made the playoffs. Then I watched Frank Gore. I knew about Frank Gore, obviously being from Miami and things like that. Devin was obviously somebody I know from back home and things like that. So I watched the team and I was like, okay, this is a great team. I see where it's going essentially. And then I just keep hearing about Bills Mafia, Bills Mafia, Bills Mafia. And I always tell people when they ask me, like, they're like, what is Bills? I'm like, for one, it's definitely the greatest fan base. And he can attest to it because he's been here. He can attest to it because he's a
I don't
Steelers
know.
guy,
I don't
right?
know. When I was
He's
in
a Steelers
Buffalo,
guy.
Bills Mafia is very quiet.
He's a Steelers guy. So he hangs his hat on the last year game when they came here and they beat us in the home. He
Right.
hangs his hat on it, right? He hangs his hat. But he won't talk about what we did to them 2 years ago, my rookie season, when we closed them out and things like that at
Or
home.
that they didn't make the playoffs or any of that.
And yeah, exactly.
It
And
doesn't
then
ring a bell.
but I mean, obviously, people told me about Bills Mafia, and I mean, I didn't get a chance to experience Bills Mafia until last season. So obviously, I missed obviously with COVID and things like that. I missed the whole first year. Tell us about your first experience with Bills Mafia, and then I mean, just pretty much tell everybody about the fan base because it really is the best fan base. Just because I feel like being here, right? Essentially, this is the the only sports team really here outside of a few colleges they have and things like that. So it feels like a college town, right? Feel like a college vibe and things like that. So the fans are just so invested in you.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. But the thing about it is, like, you get to appreciate Bills Mafia, and you guys haven't missed the playoffs since you've been here. This has been a great run. I come into Buffalo, and I play in the longest playoff drought in all of professional sports, and we still had a packed stadium. We still had support from the fans, which is a different deal.
Yeah.
And so for me, to have the support of the fans, to have them be so supportive of foundation events, see out in the community the way they treat you when your team stinks, that is a big deal. And Barstool has done a great job of talking about and promoting the jumping through tables and all that. And that is part of the fan base. They're passionate, they have fun, but that's not like on our sanctioned Bills lots. Like, there's a lot of fans that are, coming to the games and not jumping through tables and all that. But I'll say this, and the country's now got to see it the way they supported Andy Dalton's foundation, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen with his grandma passed. This is a very generous fan base. They're very tight knit. There's a Bills backers bar in every city in the country, and so it's a special deal. And you mentioned it's kind of got that college vibe. It's because it's that loyal vibe. With colleges, you got a lot of graduates. Well, you're always a graduate of that school, so you always will support them and all that. Well, with the Bills, it's like people are raised by their parents who are Bills fans, and they just adopt the Bills their whole life, and they're just loyal to a fault.
Yeah, I was literally just in Puerto Rico last week, and it was Bills fans in Puerto Rico.
Oh, they're everywhere. And
like it's crazy.
I'm down 60 pounds. I haven't played in 4 years. And everywhere I go, people, we were at Disney World and there's Bill stuff everywhere. And I'll say this, the Bills are cool now too. Like, the Bills weren't cool when I was playing for the Bills. They were cool in the early 90s, and they're cool now. Like, they have a great brand. When I was playing for the Bills, and I mean, it is what it is, losing teams when you're not playing that exciting of a brand of ball are just not going to be a cool brand. We only played in 2 primetime games in my entire 9-year career besides the mandatory Thursday games. My first ever game was on Monday Night Football, and I played in one other, I guess, Monday Night. Yeah, I broke my leg in 2016 on Monday Night Football at Seattle. And so I only played in 2 Monday night, like, primetime games, whether it be Sunday night or Monday Night Football. We weren't a cool brand. Well,
That's
now
crazy.
you walk around Disney World, you walk around an amusement park, you go to a baseball game, you're going to see Bill stuff everywhere in this country.
Yeah, literally everywhere. I mean, damn, you only played in 2 primetime games?
Oh, yeah.
I think I don't even.
You guys are getting 5 and 6 a year.
Yeah, now we're getting like 5 or 6 a year. We opening up the season with things.
We had a good Sunday at one routine, though.
No, man. Yeah. Tell us about, like you said, obviously when you got here, you guys were losing, and then now obviously the success that we're having right now, and things that we're doing. I mean, when I first got here, I think we won like 8 games in a row one time, right? And all I kept hearing was, it's hard to win, it's hard to win, it's hard to win, it's hard to win. And it is very hard to win because it doesn't matter who you play, right? Like, you could say, like, obviously your guys' team probably wasn't the best, but you guys weren't just going out there just getting blown out. Like it's not like college football where you play somebody and you know you're going to be done essentially by halftime, right? I mean, like last year we lost to the Jaguars, which a lot of people probably would think is not the best team in no sense, right? So talk about essentially, because I understand. I mean, I've really never been on a losing team. I can't think of like where we're just like terrible, because all 4 years of college, I mean, we essentially for the playoffs was like bowl eligible. So we got to do a little something extra after the season. I mean, talk about essentially walking into camp, right? Um, Understanding that you guys probably not going to make the playoffs, because I'm sure after a while it was essentially like, okay, yeah, we're not going to make the playoffs. We here, let's take care of our bodies. Let's not hurt each other and things like that, and essentially play for contracts or whatever. Talk about that, because I mean, I couldn't even bear the thought, because now I've been going on my third year now. Like you said, we've had success the last 2 seasons, tremendous success. Talk about essentially that from a player's standpoint.
Yeah, so it's funny. So I'm like the world's most eternal optimist. So each year I'm like, no, this is our year. This is not our year. And they would do enough in the offseason. The Bills would do enough in the offseason, bring some guys in, whether it was a coaching change, whatever it may be, because you got to sell tickets too. And so each year there was some type of optimism. And I'll say this, early in your career, your goal's got to be to get to that second contract. I had a conversation with Sean McDermott about this recently, and he was saying, this spring, it's so interesting to him because he was saying, I'm trying to instill a culture, but there's so many guys on a 90-man roster that are like, Coach, yes, I want to be a part of your culture, but I got to make the team first. I got to worry about me. Yeah. I got to make this team, and then, yes, I'll be all in on the process and this and that. But until I make the team, yes, I'm worried about your culture, but really, I need to make it. I need to be a little selfish here. I got to make it on a team. And so, first part of my career, it was all about how do I get to a second contract. The Bills gave me a second contract. And yes, we wanted to win, but you also want to get paid. You want to set your family up for life. You want to create generational wealth. Like that's one of the goals. That's a driving factor for most players in the NFL, myself included. But I'll say this, it's so much easier for me to root for the success of the Bills right now, to love being a part of it, just calling the games on the radio and being around it, because we broke the playoff drought. In 2017, I was a part of that team that broke the playoff drought. That was Sean McDermott's first year. Sean always talks about how that season created the foundation for what was the springboard for the success of the Bills now. So having said that, I can walk away from the game, and we can talk about this, but my career ended abruptly with that neck injury out of nowhere. Like in my mind, I should still be the center for the Bills. Like I know I could still be playing at this point in time, but I had a career-ending neck injury after the season that I was the only player on the team that played 100% of the snaps that year.
Yeah,
only a few in the NFL, because as you guys know, and most of the listeners know, I mean, your shoe can fall off. You come out for a play. You could be beating a team too bad. You could be losing too bad. You could come out for a number of reasons. Well, I played every single snap, including the playoff game that year. And I had some stingers throughout the year, so they didn't MRI my neck when I was trying to get cleared for the Pro Bowl after the season, and find a career-ending neck injury, and it's over like that. Yeah. And so for me, I can now have peace knowing that I was a part of the group that broke that 17-year playoff drought.
Yeah. And I have like a quick 2-part question. The first one's going to be a backtrack a little bit. Being the first round pick, did you feel the pressure? Like if somebody, because I know if the Steelers draft somebody first round, I expect you to come in the building and make an impact immediately. So did you feel that pressure being a first round pick, or like did you feel like it was a certain expectation that I just needed to go out there and perform and show the Bills Mafia that you guys drafted me first round, so this is what I'm gonna do, and this what I bring to the team that wasn't here before I was here?
Yeah, absolutely. And my first 4 years in the NFL, I got hurt each and every season. I came from never being hurt in my life. My rookie year, I do the Joe Theismann leg break, so I break my leg straight in half. My second year, I do a high ankle sprain on that leg, I came back after 2 weeks only because I was playing guard at the time, and they said, hey, if you come back now, we'll let you play center, because our center got hurt. So I came back after 2 weeks from that one and hobbled around for a game or a couple games. The next year, I tear my ACL, PCL, and lateral meniscus. And my fourth year, I tear my MCL. So I'm sitting there like, I'm doing everything I possibly can I'm laying it on the line each and every week. And none of these are like wear and tear injuries. It's people like crashing into my legs, and there's nothing I can do about it, in my opinion. And so I'm sitting there like, man, am I a bust? Like after 4 years, I've missed games every year, went on IR twice. Like, is this a bust of a career so far? And the Bills still rewarded me with a second contract after my 4th season. And I took a injury. There was a lot of playtime incentives in that second deal. And then I go on to start 52 straight games for the Bills, kind of a little good luck, and made the majority of that contract, which was nice. But yeah, there's definitely expectations. And one of the regrets that I have looking back on my career is not truly enjoying the first part of my career, not enjoying and appreciating being in the NFL, because it was constantly worrying about what was next and not just enjoying the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And the second part of that question was, because my football career kind of just ended. I played D1AA football at Duquesne. Like I said, I wasn't able to make it to the NFL, but I got friends that made it to the NFL. So I'm living my dream through them a little bit, kind of being excited going to the Bills games, watching my Steelers beat up on them. But the second part of that question was, because I guess you can kind of talk to me a little bit on this one as well, was how did you find peace? Or how did you feel like when your career ended? Because I know mine ended kind of due to injury a little bit. I was mostly healthy for my whole career, and then the second to last game of my senior year in high school, I messed my shoulder up, and I kind of never recovered from that. Even though I was still able to go to college, I played football. My shoulder was never really the same. Ended up having 3 shoulder surgeries, and then it just kind of got to a point where it's like, all right, I know I'm not making it to the NFL. I'm at Duquesne University, which is a good academic school. I'm getting a good education. I'm on the full ride, but I guess you could say like I kind of lost the love for it a little bit just due to injury. So like, how did that kind of play with you? Like I guess being forced not to play. Like it wasn't like you didn't want to play anymore. You were forced not to play. Like how did that take a toll on your mental? Like how did that take a toll on your mental? And how long did it take you to kind of bounce back from that and kind of like have peace? Because I know I'm at peace now finally.
Yeah, that's a great question. So because it ended by injury and there was no way of me coming back, it's easy to have peace about not playing the game anymore. But I felt like I was one of those dudes that put everything into it. So why me? You know, I'm sitting there like, God, why the guy, in my opinion, who's, working the hardest or one of the hardest workers out there, why me in this situation? Why do I have to step away from the game? But then you step back, and in any situation in life, you can find blessings in it. And as you showed, the world's most awkward press conference at the NFLPA, right before I'm getting up there to tell everyone about the injury, the NFLPA hits me up and is like, hey, you can't say this, you can't say this, you can't say that. That'll be saying you're retiring, and then you're forfeiting a bunch of injury guarantee. And so that being said, I have peace being able to look back and look at the blessings of it. I got to play 9 years in the NFL. I got to form so many special relationships. I got to be on the team that broke the playoff drought. I got to walk away from the game. Although I had a career-ending neck injury, I wasn't, debilitated. I can still do so many things I love. I can go play golf, play pickleball, I can go out in the lake with my buddies. Like I can play with my kids. I would, and look, I would have played till the wheels fell off, especially with this run the Bills got going now. There's no way. I could have never walked away. And then once you win one Super Bowl this year, it'd have been like, well, let's go win back to back. Let's pull an L away and go win back to back. Well, then what are you gonna do after that? Go try and win a third. I can't let, because it's gonna be so much fun to be on this ride. I know, Zach, I know y'all are having so much fun in Buffalo, winning games, and winning's more. I always say winning's more fun than fun is fun. Like having fun, going out partying's fun. What's more fun? Winning.
Winning,
having that sense that, man, we all laid it on the line and we won together. So all that being said, it was a lot of work to just go and find the blessings in the situation and then focus on what I was going to transition to next, which is kind of ever flowing. I worked at ESPN. Yeah. I called games for Fox. I called the games for the Bills on the radio. I have my podcast. I have a book coming out that I'll plug right now. It's on pre-sale on Amazon right now. It's called Tackle What's Next. And a lot of that is talking about my transition out of the NFL and many of these podcast guests that I've had on that have helped me fuel my journey and transition to what's next. A David Novak, who's the CEO of Yum Brands with KFC and Taco Bell and Pizza Hut and all them. A Junior Bridgman, who's now owner of Coca-Cola Bottling and Distributing, top 5 richest black man in the country, second richest NBA player of all time behind Michael Jordan. Talking to guys like that and having them aid my transition process and what I learned from all them, and kind of compiled it into a book so that it could be a resource for somebody out there. Because look, COVID's put everybody in a period of transition. And just if you haven't had something monumental in your life, each day can be a transition. You can wake up today and say, you know what, I'm going to be better than I was yesterday. How do I transition to that? And, that my book, Tackle What's Next, talks a lot on how do I optimize myself today, even if it is in a, death of a loved one or a loss of a job.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I was gonna ask this. I guess it's kind of right on cue because I know growing up, I dealt with a lot of loss, and I have my own personal podcast that's more so focused on mental health. I lost my father when I was 2 months old. I was born November 1st. My father passed away December 31st. So I kind of grew up without my father, and I was blessed. My mom ended up marrying somebody, which ended up being my stepfather. And he's still, I don't call him my stepfather, but he's my father to the day because he's the only person I grew up knowing. And I was doing a little research on you, and I seen that you lost your little brother, I believe, when you were 11 years old, Evan Wood.
He was
So
11. Yep.
yeah, well, he was 11. So can you just speak on that a little bit, like the effect it had on you growing up? Because I know dealing with loss growing up, football was my escape. So when I played football, that was my way of kind of getting away from everything. And I know when I got on the football field, I didn't think about anything on the outside. Like that was kind of my sanctuary a little bit. So can you just talk about the effect that had on you, and what are you doing to keep his name alive?
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking that. And so for me, I was 14 when my brother passed, but for that 11 years that he was alive, he was born with severe cerebral palsy. So he never walked, he never talked, he never breathed on his own. Ooh, look at that smile. But that being said, for me, that's how I knew him and that's all I knew. But, now having two kids of my own, I understand the physical, emotional, the financial strain that having a sick child in the house or at the hospital can have on a family. So that led me to start the Eric Wood Foundation, which is now the Evan Wood Fund, and will stay in Buffalo, New York, which helps families out financially or with experience that have sick children. And so, Evan's name will now live on in Buffalo forever. But for me personally, there was times, you hit a tough conditioning session in college and everyone starts to feel sorry for themselves. Well, I would hit a mental edge. I would take it to the next level and be like, man, your brother couldn't even walk his whole life and you're going to feel sorry for yourself for running? Like that's weak. And so I would get in this mental state and just hit to the next level. And I end up setting our strength and conditioning record at Louisville. And when I talk about that, I often say, there was many times I wanted to stop or quit, but thinking about my brother and the struggles he had, I couldn't find myself to quit because of that. So that constantly drove me throughout my life.
Definitely. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and you said something about the strength and conditioning. Coach Ciano and Coach Howell wanted me to tell you what's up. I was just there this morning at 8 a.m. working out with those guys. And I told them that you were coming on. So they wanted me to say what's up to you and things like that. Because they have some crazy stories.
Oh, yeah. And I'm a former off-season workout lifter of the year, whatever.
Yeah, he mentioned that
award. I was a former winner of that award. And, that's one of the things, I always talk about, like, there's so much in football and in pro sports that you cannot control. So you must control everything you can. And being there when no one else is there, like Zach's doing, like that's something you can control. You can control the amount of work you put in. And although you don't make the team in the offseason and you don't win a Super Bowl in the offseason, you can go the other way. You're doing everything you can right now to ensure that you're setting yourself up for your best season this upcoming year.
Absolutely. Definitely. Absolutely. I know you got a time crunch here and things like that. So I got a last question for you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the league right now? Obviously, you've seen how the game has progressed from the time when you played. I mean, even before you got in the league and things like that, and obviously kind of where the state of the game is now. What do you think the game is right now? What are your thoughts on the league right now and things like that?
Man, I think it's in a phenomenal spot. And you'll get some old heads that are saying, man, it's not as physical as it used to be and whatnot, but the ratings are soaring. There's so many digital networks that are coming out, which are just going to pump so much money into it. I love where the game's at with all the young quarterback talent right now. And it worried me a little bit because the college game is changing so much. I was worried that some of these college quarterbacks weren't going to be able to come in and have a similar impact that maybe the Peyton Mannings in that generation had when the college game looked a lot like the NFL game. Well, now these NFL offenses are adapting to those guys right now. When you look at these young quarterbacks in the league, especially in the AFC, when everyone thought Aaron Rodgers was leaving going to an AFC team, you're crazy. There's no way he wants to come over here and compete with Russell and Josh and Justin and Joe and Lamar And, the list goes on. I mean, there's just so much talent, especially in the AFC at quarterback. So I think the league is in a great spot right now. Everyone loves to hate him, and that's mainly because he's the voice, he's the mouthpiece of the owners. But what Roger Goodell has done in leadership to negotiate some of these contracts, I mean, when you're talking about $100 billion TV deal over 10 years, that is monster. And that's just going to keep the salary cap going up and up and up. And, hopefully other position groups besides quarterback, corner, edge rusher, and receiver start to escalate as well. But you're going to see guys start to be rewarded handsomely as well. And I just think the league is in a great spot. Do you guys feel the same?
Yeah, definitely. I think sports overall right now is in a great spot. Like you said, obviously, dealing with the money and things like that. But just I hate using the word product, but the product that we have, right? Like you said, all the quarterbacks in the AFC, right? And then you think about, I love basketball. We talk about basketball a lot on here. But you think about the stars, all the young guys that's in the NBA and all those type of things. Just like the sports that, technically that we watch a lot, basketball, obviously football and things like that. I think we just have so many young stars, and the game is just growing so just at a great rate right now. And it's real good to see, and it's lovely to see, because I know, once, ball is over for myself and things like that, I know we still going to have, be able to watch these guys continue to play for X amount of time. And then obviously where the treatment and the medicine is and things like that, guys can continuously play for a while. Like, I mean, just look at Brady.
Yeah, and you know what? I think you brought up a great point there as well. Like the technology and the modalities for recovery are so much better than they used to be. I mean, I go to Jim Kelly's golf tournament every single year, and man, it was alarming to me early in my career watching these dudes who played in their 50s walk around on the golf course. I'm like, is that what I'm going to look like when I'm 55 years old? Well, they weren't foam rolling and stretching and massaging and hyperbaric and cryo. There's a lot we're doing now to prevent that. And there's so much more research too. The concussion movie and all of that brought out a ton of bad press for the NFL. And look, they're a big time corporation. When you're talking about a $10 billion corporation, or what, when you're talking, or more than that, when you're talking about 32 teams worth over $3 billion, is there going to be shady stuff behind the scenes? You guarantee it. You can guarantee it. But I'll say this, with the research now, that neurogenesis happens till the day we die, where your brains are constantly healing if you're treating them the right way. That gives hope to a lot of the former NFL guys too, because that was kind of the black eye on the league was, man, this is really entertaining. But every time you see one of those big hits, you're like, it used to get you excited when you saw those big hits to the head. Now you're like, man, that dude's got a family.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's just like me as a former player. But to me now, when I see those big hits, I'm like, well, we do more now to help those guys recover. And we can do a lot to help them, live a functional life for the rest of their life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I came in, obviously growing up watching guys like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and, a lot of big time, hitters and how the game was played back then, essentially for some reason I was still in that mind frame of thinking that's how the game is going to be, because it didn't look like essentially you have friends, when you grow up between the white lines, you don't got no friends, X, Y, and Z, and all that type of stuff. And I remember, like my rookie year, I can't remember what game it was, but one of our guys got injured, and the other team was actually like, they felt bad because one of their guys did it, right? I mean, going back to my injury, my rookie year, our first game versus the Colts, I break my ankle just from a tackle. And I mean, just being on the ground, I could just obviously my eyes were closed and things, but the few times that I did look around, I could see guys just like being around, actually you can sense the care was there and things like that. And they're saying they're going to pray for you. Like, these guys on the opposite side of the team, not just your team, what I mean? So I think the game has definitely gotten a lot better and a lot safer, essentially, because like you said, like you see older guys that played back in those days when they didn't have these type of things at their leisure and things like that. It just wasn't best. And I think now it's going to continue to give us so much more going forward and things like that. But
yeah, and if you think the game is soft, go stand on an NFL sideline right now and listen to something. You guys are learning how to hit and not hit the head, but still deliver a big blow.
Exactly.
And also, what I tell those old heads who are like, "Man, the game is soft," I'm like, "Well, linebackers didn't look like Tremaine Edmonds at 6'5", 255 pounds that can run a 4.6 40. Like that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So that's the offensive lineman didn't look like Trent Williams at 335 running a 4.8 like a freight train. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference. And we're just smarter about it. But if you look at the ratings aren't going away.
Nope.
Game's in a healthy spot. So and we're teaching kids how to play it a better way now. And you're seeing the fruits of that come into the league now where, first when they started putting in those penalties for hits to the head, it was like it felt like every other play was a questionable hit. And now guys are, learning to play the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Badger, any last thoughts?
I think my last thought, I don't know if we hit on it, but what was your most memorable moment of your NFL career? It can be off the field, in the field.
Yeah, it was definitely that final game of the regular season in 2017. So we beat the Dolphins down in Miami, and then we go back in the locker room, and we needed the Bengals to beat the Ravens. So we watched the Bengals beat the Ravens, I believe in overtime, but there was a late touchdown to Tyler Boyd from Andy Dalton. I'll never forget it. We watched that, and we celebrated like little kids in the locker room. But, man, I'll never win a Super Bowl as a player, but that sure felt like winning a Super Bowl, getting that monkey off your back and breaking that playoff drought.
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
That's awesome. No, but I just personally want to thank you for coming to the show. It was a pleasure talking to you. Just from my point of view, you're one of the first offensive linemen I talked to on a podcast like this. So I want to thank you, and I definitely want you to text the name of your book to Zach, and I'll be sure to purchase it and read on it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Absolutely, you would, man. Appreciate you hopping on with us. It's a blessing to have you on. Thank you for telling your story and everything like that. This is another episode of Moss Molding Friends, episode 11 with Eric Wood. We out. Appreciate you.